Meet CA Richa Malhotra, who has built a family corpus of 2.5 crores. She is a working mother and a tax expert with 17 years of experience.
I became a CA at the age of 24 years, got married at the age of 25, and now I have two kids.
Her career didn't move in a straight line. At one point, she had to pause what she loved to be with her family.
I really loved my job. I was doing it with all that passion, but then came a twist.
Her investment journey hasn't been smooth either. She has also made mistakes that many families will relate to. In this episode, we discussed how she rebuilt the plan, her passive income strategy, and the tax hacks most salaried people don't know about.
8 components under the new tax regimes, which can again bring the special allowance component to a very nominal value.
This is a conversation about planning money as a family with responsibility, patience, and clarity.
वो कहते हैं ना बूंद बूंद से घड़ा भरता है, so that's a really true and valuable saying here.
Hey Richa.
Hi Aditi.
Yeah, thank you for hosting us at your
pleasure.
place. Welcome to Power Up Money podcast. So you have built a family corpus of 2.5 crore along with your demanding tax career, raising 2 kids, and all this while keeping your financial plan on track. So could you please walk us through your early career journey?
Yeah, sure, Aditi. So, as I mentioned, I'm a chartered accountant with 17 years of experience in the field of accounting, auditing, and taxation. Like other CAs, my initial journey started with both statutory and internal audits, further followed by handling the balance sheets, preparation of P&L accounts, and handling audits for the corporates. Also, as a third pillar of chartered accountancy, taxation was something I really wanted to cover. And that was the point of time when I joined taxspanner.com. So I basically filed returns, I interacted with people and, to know about their finance, their pain points and all. And that was the point of time when I realized that, I love the human side of taxation. I really loved my job. I was doing it with all that passion, but then came a twist, so with 2 young kids and, a demanding career, long working hours, I had to take a pause. So after that, I moved to an NGO, worked there for almost 6 years, not because it was my dream job, but my family demanded me at that point of time. But somewhere inside me, I felt, that a major part, my love towards, guiding people, helping them with taxes was missing. And then one fine day after that 6 years period was gone, I got a call from my CEO, from my ex-boss, who was the CEO and co-founder of taxspanner.com. That, hey Richa, you know what, TaxSpanner has been acquired by Zaggle and, we are willing to offer you a position to head the corporate services at TaxSpanner. So that time it seems that, all those sacrifices were worth it and I'm getting close to the dream I had been living for. And he also mentioned that, now you don't have to help a bunch full of employees with their taxes. You're going to interact with the CFOs, you're going to interact with the CHROs, and then you will be able to save taxes for thousands of employees. So something I'd always dreamt of it. So every challenge I took, everything which happened shaped my career, and because of that, I'm here at this position.
Oh, wow, interesting. So, as you're talking about your early, basically career background, could you also give a little bit of gist about your family background? From where did you come? Where are you born and brought up?
Okay, so I'm born and brought up in Delhi. I have been raised in a joint family. We were 10 members, including my grandparents, my parents, my Taiji, and cousins. So we were a family of 10. Eventually, as I grew up, my cousins, they moved abroad, all 3 of them, and I'm the only one settled in India and handling the entire family. I was always good academically, but always a very talkative student. And since my grades were always good, and at that point of time, CA was, at the peak of, and it was considered as a very good profession. So that's how I joined Chartered Accountancy and continued my BCom honors. Also did post-graduation diploma in business administration. I became a CA at the age of 24 years, got married at the age of 25, and now I have 2 kids. My husband, he's a chartered accountant by profession, running his own practice.
Oh wow, that's interesting. I really like how you have planned everything and coming from a joint family, and I think in joint family we have been like taught the habit of savings a lot. This is like I also come from a joint family, and I think if I'm assuming it's a middle class family, it's a service. You come from a service class background.
right.
So when you started your journey, then at what point in time you started earning your money, like the first stipend or the first salary that you got, and how much were you saving at that point in time?
Okay, so the first stipend I got was during my articleship. I earned 3,000 rupees, and I still remember that even from that 3,000 rupees, since I was from a service class background and I had seen my parents saving every penny of money and all, from that 3,000 rupees, I managed to buy gifts for my entire family, including my grandparents, maternal and paternal. So that is something I did. So that is what I was earning during articleship. Then when I became a CA, my starting salary was 20,000 rupees. So I pursued my job for 9 months, took a break of next 2 to 3 months because my marriage was there. I was equally excited looking after that marriage plans and all. And, we had a love marriage. I knew my husband from past 8 years, and then things worked well in that direction. So that's something which happened. Took that break of 3 months to settle down in the family, and since then I've never stopped working.
So I would love to know what was your first proper salary now, like a proper corporate job, and at that point in time, when did you start saving? Like in which year you did your first saving?
All right, so it was basically 2009. I got married in February, and my first corporate job started in June. So at that point of time, my salary was 33,000 per month. And like majority individuals do, I also, saved in national saving certificates, which was with a 6 years tax saving and then an FD for 5 years. So that's how it started. Then that was further followed by investing in a recurring deposit of 10,000 per month. I didn't had much obligations, no kids, nothing like that. So I could manage taking out 10,000. But that wasn't for wealth creation or something like that. It was more related to a dream I had to take my family to US, because my brother puts up in US along with his family. So wanted to do that first foreign visit by my salary. And then eventually after a period of 3 years, that amount grew to 4,20,000 rupees, which was sufficient for 3 of us. Then later on, this was further followed by, investing in mutual funds. I started my first SIP for 5,000 rupees per month. Eventually, the salary grew to 60,000, then 80,000 and so on. And as you mentioned in the very beginning, because of kids, because of this demanding career and all, I had to let go on my salary also. I've joined different organizations, reducing my salary because I had to manage working hours. I had to manage my stay in a joint family, look at all that setup. But at the same time, wanted to ensure that I don't take a break from work. So I preferred working at lesser salary, yet managing my investments, because that's a lesson I learned from my parents at the very beginning.
Interesting, that you started your saving and investing journey very early in your career, and how were you able to fulfill your dream of international vacation with your parents? Now I would love to know as you have been investing, like it's been I think more than
17
years that you have been investing, then have you done any mistakes during that period?
Yeah, of course, like everybody does, there were mistakes which were done at my end. So the very first thing I did was, we invested in 2 plots, just randomly, because one fine day I was speaking to my husband and I just told him that, all of our friends around us who are also chartered accountants, they have their own property and all. What are we doing? I mean, I have a good family background, so he does. But then we need to, being 2 chartered accountants working together, we need to have something of our own. So why don't we invest in property? But at that point of time, we invested in 2 plots after a year's gap or so, because it was just for the sake of doing it. We didn't know that, it will not be giving us any tax benefits, nor it was creating any passive income. So that was the very first financial mistake we did. Further followed by a property which we bought for an office space for my husband's firm, Tenu Sood and Company. So we bought that property on a home loan. Everything was going good. And 2 years, we enjoyed the tax benefit. We enjoyed the principal repayment, tax savings under Section 80C. Everything was good. But then again, I'll mention the same thing. Coming from a service class background, my parents didn't believe in debt, and I followed the same approach. I thought, why don't I break my mutual fund corpus to finance this home loan? So that is something I did at that point of time. But eventually, with my learning, I realized that mutual funds are giving a return of 12 to 15% on an average, whereas home loan interest component was 5 to 6% post tax. So imagine the kind of difference I did. So I lost on tax savings, I lost on the mutual fund corpus I had accumulated. So no growth, no return. So this was one of the biggest mistakes financially. But it taught me a very good lesson which no book can teach. It was my personal experience, right?
Oh, interesting. So you think that the prepayment of loan was not a good idea for you?
Yeah.
So I think you could have do you have any tentative number in your mind ki if I would have not done this, then maybe my corpus have been like much more than the like X amount?
So I can, I haven't evaluated this particular scenario, but what I can say is that, after this, there was no looking back. And then we strategically planned. Now that we know that, a ready to move in property will give us passive income also and all. So our investments into real estate, which is almost 50% of my total corpus. So to build that particular corpus, what we did, we bought a house property on loan. This is the property I'm talking about. And the first 2 floors are given on rent. On the 3rd floor, we combined it with our existing house staying here. And the best part is the EMI is majorly financed from the rentals of the property. Right, so we are getting the passive income also. I'm enjoying the home loan interest, and I'm saving under Section 80C also on the principal repayment component. So that's how we, and this is all without breaking the mutual fund. So came out from that thing.
Okay, now this is interesting for me because ideally the scenario is that the rental yield is very less as compared to the EMI that people pay. So how did you manage that? You are saying your rent is almost equivalent to EMI.
Almost. So see, where we reside here, the rental is almost 25,000 on the first floor and 20,000 on the second floor, which makes an amount of 45,000. The EMI of the house is 50,000. So it's just 5,000 being paid from the pocket. And the best part is EMI will end after 20 years by the time I get retired, assuming I don't have any plans for fire in mind. I actually want to work up till the reasonable age of 60 years. So since I have that in mind, the EMIs will end by that period, but I will still continue to have the passive income, and it's all going to be mine at that point of time with lesser taxation versus what I'm paying now.
So you are saying the 50% was already with you, but the 50% was the land also you bought? The exact land and you got to construct it?
No. It's a ready to move in property. This is a ready house. This is the 3rd floor was constructed for us to stay. So now we have realized the value of that passive income which can come from rent, and at the same time we are enjoying the tax benefits under Section 80C interest benefit, under Section 24 on the interest component of home loan, right? Which was not the case when we took plots earlier.
So, okay. So now coming to your investment portfolio, as you have said, ki 50% is in a real estate. So could you please let us know ki what exactly your investment bifurcation looks like?
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, the total portfolio is around 2.5 CR, which is bifurcated into 4 parts. So approximately 50% is into real estate, 25% is into mutual funds, then 10% is into gold, including jewelry. And the balance 15% is into debt, which is like fixed deposits, NSC, Sukanya Samriddhi scheme, PF, PPF, etc. So that's how my portfolio is comprised of.
Got it. Interesting. So your 50% real estate also includes your self-consumption property?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, we are putting up on the 3rd floor. So this is self-occupied, but the other 2 floors are on rent. And we have bought another property in my husband's name. So that is entirely on rentals. So it's basically the structure looks like it's a 6-floor flat. So earning from those 6, giving it to different tenants, and they are basically students, right? So some houses are for 10,000, some houses are for 8,000, but altogether they are fetching good amount of interest to cover the EMI. So we have followed the same strategy.
Got it.
So it is also strategy planning at one hand, and on the other hand, it's also an emotional decision, because we have planned basically one house for staying in future for our future purposes. The second property is planned for son's higher education and his future plans, and the third one is for the daughter. So we are sorted in terms of real estate. So it's all planned, and it's all rotational. So for instance, I always plan for my NPS, self-contribution to NPS in the month of March. So I'm mentally prepared that, in this month I have to take out those 50,000 rupees, which is a huge amount. So I have to keep my investments low for the month. So that's how I have worked it eventually. So that's about the mutual funds, and every year the contribution is growing. So now, starting with 5,000 contribution earlier, my mutual fund contribution is 40,000 per month as of now.
Oh, interesting. So your retirement is sorted with the rental income, and your kids' education is sorted with your mutual funds. And obviously, you're going to invest furthermore for better life.
Yeah, absolutely.
So why do you invest in NPS during March month?
Well, there's no particular logic of investing in March, but as I told you that I'm a very planning-oriented person, so I have to set aside a particular month when this thing needs to be done. So usually increments happen in the month of April, so maybe the salary might increase by then if I'm lucky enough, like other employees. But then keeping it in March just give me a sense of responsibility, just a control in my mindset that I need to actually control on my expenses, right? And March is comparatively a safer month because tuition fees and all those major expenses have gone, and then you're looking for a hike in April. So that's the logic. It can be any month as per your convenience, but something is you have to fix because it's a big amount of 50,000 rupees and utmost required because NPS self-contribution under Section 80 CCD 1B, if you invest up to 50,000 rupees and you fall under the old tax regime, you straightforward save 15,000 in terms of taxes. And this is also market linked, right? Yeah. So you're saving, you're building your retirement corpus.
No. I like your strategy. But now I would love to know more on mutual fund mutual fund investments. So you basically don't see your investments. Let's say if your fund has gone out of form and it has started to underperform. So do you also keep an eye on that?
So, well, yes, I do monitor the mutual funds, but not on a day-to-day basis. And I actually don't worry about the small dips. And if there is a drop in any particular fund, we don't panic about it because we have proper plans. We evaluate that, what are the reasons for underperformance of that fund, and is it for a longer duration of time, and has there been any change in the fund management and all. And only when it looks risky at that point of time, that is when we decide to reduce the corpus from that or exit from that fund.
Yeah. So you take a call, tactical call also.
Tactical call at that point of time. But I don't worry on short-term dips at all because I'm a person with vision. I'm a person who plans properly. So I wait.
Yeah, no. I totally agree. I think one thing that I like about your tip is the goal-based planning. So also you said that your mutual fund contribution, your mutual fund investment specifically for kids.
Kids education.
So how are you planning for that? What's your framework? And
so yes, I'm using my mutual fund corpus for my kids' higher education. So in fact, this idea came when my article was about to be published in Economic Times Wealth. And that was the point of time when I honestly sat with a pen and, jotted that what is the amount I'm really looking at, after 12 years and 6 years, because my elder son, he was 12 years at that point of time. So additional 6 years available for that sort of planning, and for my daughter who was 6 at that point of time, another 12 years to save. And considering the inflation factor, considering the cost of education today, the figures came around 1.5 CR for my son's higher education and 2.5 CR for my daughter's higher education. And we were already investing 40,000 per month into SIPs. So this is broadly covered from that. However, an interesting point here is that we still plan to go for an education loan, not because I have to, but for the simple reason that, education loan gives additional tax benefits when you repay them, and I want to instill the same financial discipline in my children, which I learned from my parents, right? And I am thankful to them. So I want my kids also to be thankful. And I, want that they pursue their higher education. I help them with setting their careers and then retire rich and full of abundance.
So great, yeah, nice planning. So I'm assuming that you have planned these investments along with your husband. So how you both work as a team? in financial planning?
Actually, a very good question. So, as I mentioned, during our earlier years, there was not much I was earning. My first salary was 33,000 rupees when we settled down, and he was into his own practice, setting up a client base because there is no inheritance of CA practice and all. So jointly we earned somewhere around 50K or something. So initially, since we were putting up in a joint family, he contributed to the grocery and the other regular expenses of the household. And I used to take care of any luxury, any shopping, any trips we planned, but also ensuring that we save every penny we have been left with, because we know eventually we have to rise as a family and all. Also, we purposely chose this particular thing that I will be into job and he will be running his own practice. Although many people inquired from us that why don't you join your husband's business? It's going to be much convenient since the family is growing and all that, and you can earn better. But we were very clear in our goals right from the beginning that we want to keep our personal and professional life different. And eventually, during the tough COVID period of 2 years, this decision proved to be a blessing in disguise, because he lost many of his clients because they lost onto their business. So the income which was coming from the practice declined a lot, whereas I was into job earning a fixed amount of salary, so we didn't face that financial pressure which many couples would have faced, and they were stressed during that COVID period. So that point of time doesn't came. And after that, with the growth in our professional journey and all, we shifted the approach. Now, since I'm earning a fixed amount of income, I make sure to pay for the grocery bills, to pay for tuition kids, any extracurricular activities they are joining. And he takes care of the luxury part of it, like investing in cars and all, because that's something we enjoy as a couple. Investing in cars, taking out the initial amount which you have to pay for the properties we have bought, and any foreign trips, luxuries and all is being taken care of by my spouse. So that ways we are sorted, and this is how we have evolved our careers together and invested in this purpose.
Interesting.
So, one quick question. What is the LTCG impact people should keep in mind while selling mutual funds like you did, or even selling properties to reinvest in other assets?
Well, I was fortunate enough because this house property home loan was prepaid through the mutual funds in the financial year 13-14, when there was no impact on the long-term capital gains, right? Yeah. So that was it. But yes, certainly for the audience and all, I have one advice here. Many of you would be knowing, but adding for the ones who don't have a clear idea regarding Section 54. So this talks about if you sell any residential house property, either 1 year before or 2 years after, you need to purchase or invest the capital gain proceeds into another house property to make it fully tax exempt. That is something you need to follow. And if you are constructing a house, the proceeds should be used within 3 years from the period of construction when you sold the house property. So this is something one should follow. And in case the new house property which is purchased, that is sold within a period of 3 years after doing this particular arrangement, then the entire amount which was exempt as LTCG earlier will be charged as short-term capital gain in the year of selling the property. So make sure you don't sell a property before 3 years of purchasing the same. And if for some reason you're not able to put the amount, in a property right away, like you sold your property but you cannot put it, make sure that it is put into the capital gain account scheme, CGAS scheme, so that the money is intact and no taxes are levied on it. And if you do this arrangement, make sure that it is done prior to the ITR filing due date to claim the tax benefits on the same.
I think now this reminds me of your expertise. I would love to talk about the taxes part. What are the major mistakes working professionals like us make in their salary structure?
Okay, so particularly when you refer to salary structure, it is that, there is lack of financial awareness, which I could make out during my client interactions and all. And if it is not available at the top level, at the HR level, then the same will not be passed on to the employees. There is lack of financial awareness. There is lack of webinars and sessions which we undertake as a part of the exercise. And with the recent changes in the wage code also, there are 11 components which can be offered by an organization well within the income tax provisions. under the old tax regime where you can save taxes and almost bring your special allowance component to zero under the old tax regime, and 8 components under the new tax regime still allowed, which can again bring the special allowance component to a very nominal value, which includes corporate NPS also. And since I help employees in HR in the salary structuring and all, I ensure to use the benefit of each and every salary component available by Zaggle to me. So I'm using meals, I'm using books and periodicals, I'm using the health and financial wellness wallet, apart from corporate NPS, attire, and car lease rental, which gives the maximum tax benefit when accompanied with a driver's salary and fuel allowance. So I'm able to save approximately 50% in terms of taxes just using the car lease rental. And this is also advisable to the HRs from that perspective, because they want to retain the talent. And car lease rental policies are for a period of 3 years to 4 years. So even with that kind of mindset, I've taken this. I'm saving on fuel, I'm saving on the driver's salary. So in nutshell, if you compute, even if I'm paying a monthly amount of 25,000 to my driver, I'm saving approximately 8,000 in terms of taxes. So the net outflow from my pocket is only 16,000, but I'm financing somebody for 25,000. So that's the.
Is it all applicable for old tax regime?
Yeah. So car lease rental is available both under the old and the new tax regime. The only thing what I notice is that employees are too lazy for actually planning this and for reaching out their HR. So they should definitely consult a tax expert, and before that they should check with their HR if they are offering these kind of flexi components as a structure. And now since salary structuring has become a mandatory exercise, so this is the right time when corporates can actually give this kind of benefit to the employees who are actually worried as of now that their take home will reduce because the basic salary has increased, and in turn the PF contribution, NPS, which are related to it, would also decrease, right? So bringing a correct salary structure into place is all the more important now for individuals.
As you said, car lease rental is applicable for old tax and new tax regime. Along with that, what are the other benefits that are applicable for both the regimes?
So under old tax regime, there is no restriction under the Income Tax Act, and that is why the list is big. It is a 14 component list, but specifically since your question is towards the new tax regime, so the 8 components which are allowed by the Income Tax Act under the new tax regime comprises of your corporate NPS, your company car lease along with fuel and driver salary, gadget and equipment allowance, health and financial wellness, books and periodicals, and gift. So these are the 8 components wherein tax savings can still be allowed even if you fall under the new tax regime. But basis my experience, I have noticed that, this kind of information is not available. People are very adamant on the fact that since we have opted for new tax regime, we cannot get any salary structuring done in spite of these 8 components being allowed by the Income Tax Act only, with the only condition that these components have to be exclusively used for official purposes. Under old tax regime, you are free to use for any purposes you feel like. So that's the only difference. And sorry, I missed on one component, which is telecommunication allowance, again allowed under the new tax regime as well.
Oh, interesting. I think a lot of people are not aware about all these all these components.
So, Richa, to conclude this conversation, how would you summarize your investing journey over 17 years and what final advice would you give to the audience?
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, my investment journey started as usual, which most of people do, investing in 5 years fixed deposit scheme or NSEs, PPF for that matter. Okay, and it was more of tax saving strategy versus wealth building strategy. But after a period of 5 years, I started investing in real estate and mutual funds. So basically, mutual funds taught me the power of discipline and savings, and real estate taught me how, to achieve your long-term goals, how to have that kind of patience. So these things were equally added in my portfolio. Apart from that, I have also made it a point that, it's good and important to plan for your kids' future, but at the same time, your financial independence and securing your retirement is equally important. So hence, I added LIC and National Pension Scheme to my portfolio to balance that particular activity. Passive income is equally important, so that is something we added properties and rented them out. So that's also part of the investment strategy. Apart from contributing to fixed deposits, PPF, and Sukanya Samriddhi scheme. And the major principle I follow, which I want to advise to others also, increase your cost of living, increase your standard of living, but after increasing the investment you have for that. So align every single rupee for a particular purpose, which will have you grow over the years. And that's how even my investment portfolio has grown from a starting of 5,000 rupees to almost 50,000 per month now.
Interesting. So I think that's the one takeaway that I would like to have over here is कि first increase your investments and then think about increasing your expenses.
Exactly, because वो कहते हैं ना बूंद बूंद से घड़ा भरता है, so that's a really true and valuable saying here. So the final thing here is, you know, plan like a parent, invest like a professional, and follow the correct tax structuring advices, which will actually help you in achieving a good take-home salary despite of the changes in the new wage code.
Oh yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Richa, for such an amazing advice. I'm glad to host you.
My
thanks a lot.
pleasure. Thank you.